Hi, my name is Darrin Campbell. I am the president and CEO of Namibia Critical Metals. We are a Canadian TSXV listed company, and we are developing a Tier 1 heavy rare earth project in Namibia. Our Lofdal project is a globally significant deposit of the heavy rare earths, dysprosium, and terbium.
Darrin, good to see you. And thanks for coming on the show. First time we've had you on the show. And Namibia, a country dear to my heart as well. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today. What I'd like to kind of focus on is perhaps get a kind of broad understanding of what you're doing. So let's start with first things. What is a heavy rare earth? What's it used for?
So the main metals, rare earth metals in our deposit are dysprosium and terbium, which are two critical metals used in the production of permanent magnets used for EV motors, wind turbines, missile defense systems, such as that.
Right. Okay. So I think it's kind of good to work out what we're talking about, and we also better talk about where you are. So Namibia, as a mining jurisdiction, perhaps not known by North American audience or elsewhere. What can you tell us?
Namibia is a fantastic jurisdiction to work in. We've been working there for about a decade. We've established an excellent relationship with all levels of government. It is very politically stable, excellent infrastructure, a very well-established set of regulatory framework to work within, a very supportive mining jurisdiction, and very mining-friendly. There's a long, rich history of diversified mining in Namibia. It is one of the largest exporters of uranium in the world, as well as they have a very large established gold projects, producing gold mines, copper mines, and soon to be rare earths.
Okay. Well, you say that, right? You say it's mining friendly, and I've been in country, and I've been at several mine sites, etc. And met some of the ministers, and I think what you say is true. But back in June, the Namibia declared that it's going to ban exports of unprocessed critical minerals. What's that do for businesses like yours?
Well, in our case, it will have no impact. Under no scenario do we envisage ever exporting unprocessed rare earth oxides or ores. We believe, and our understanding is that this was a reaction, and maybe a bit of an overreaction by the government to a situation where there was a foreign company that was exporting large amounts of unprocessed pegmatite ore under the guise of testing purposes. So again, in our situation, no impact.
No impact. Okay, right, good. I'm sort of ticking off a few things, which I think one in terms of terminology and variables, but before we kind of get into the Lofdal proper, which is, and you brought up one of those. So you've been at this a long time under different names with this asset. Can you give me the sort of potted history of how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, so we've been working on this project since about 2010. So the predecessor company was called ETech Resources. Etruscan brought 3 greenfield gold projects in West Africa through discovery and into production and sale to Endeavour Mining back in 2012. And the Lofdal heavy rare earth project was spun out from that sale to Endeavour. And a very valid criticism against the project back then was that it was just too small. In 2012, we put out a maiden resource, and then 2014, a PEA. And at that time, the resource was only about a 6 million ton resource of total rare earth oxide and about a 6-year mine life. We have completely dispelled those criticisms with developments over the last 3 years with our partnership with Jogmec. We did a major drill program in 2020 where we made a massive increase to the size of this resource, bringing it from 6 million tons to 53 million tons, and clearly establishing it as one of the largest deposits of dysprosium and terbium anywhere in the world outside of China.
Right, okay. And you mentioned one of your, well, it's effectively how you're funding this going for Jogmec, which is a Japanese organization for metal and energy security, along with the Japanese government. They have come in. You've done a deal with them. So give us the outline terms of the deal that you've got with them, please.
Yeah. So in 2020, we secured a fantastic transformational deal with Jogmec, a government agency of Japan. Jogmec is spending $20 million Canadian over 3 terms to earn up to a 50% interest in the project. The first term was a $3 million non-refundable commitment, which they achieved. Term 2 was for them to spend an additional $7 million to earn 40%. So $10 million in total during the first 40%, which they just completed earlier this year. We are now in the beginning or midway through the final term 3, where they have to spend another $10 million to get another 10%. So $20 million total. We're at about $12 million to date. And with those funds, as I said, we've been able to dramatically increase the size of the resource. We've put a lot of money into processing and metallurgy to really simplify our processing and flow sheet. So we are now in the midst of a PFS, which we expect to deliver by Q3 of next year. And that is all fully funded under the Jogmec terms and agreement.
Right.
Further to the agreement.
Yeah, please give me that detail.
So further to the agreement, in addition to the 50%, they can also purchase another 1% with a $5 million cash payment. And at that time, Namibia Critical Metals has the optionality to either elect to be diluted down to a carried working interest of no less than 26% by repaying back the $5 million payment, or we can elect to participate at 49%, which is a fantastic transaction for our shareholders and we've secured one of the premier partners for a rare earth project, which is essentially the Japanese government.
For sure. But let's be sorry, I don't want to leave that so I totally understand it. So at the point they come up with this kind of option of for 1% at 5 million Canadian, we're talking like Canadian, right?
Yes.
So they'll have 51%, you'll have 49%. You've got two parts there. One, you obviously have to fund your portion of that going forward, or you opt out by repaying $5 million back to them, and you get carried. So you retain 26%, and you get carried to what point?
Through to commercial production.
Commercial production and beyond?
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Included in our 26% is a 5% amount that is held by historically disadvantaged Namibians. So that's mandated as a result of a mining license that we were issued in 2021. So Namibia Critical shareholders would be 21%. The 5% would be going to the Namibian group.
Okay.
And then the balance to Japan.
Okay, so it's 21% net. Okay. I'm afraid. Have you got a preference? I mean, in today's market, I know what I'd go for, but are you going to, when do you have to make that decision?
Not until the end of term 3, when they complete their $20 million earn-in, and when they make the election to purchase 1% or not. So we still have, some time before that decision point comes to. And it'll be purely an economic decision for us, depending on the economics of the project. My feeling is right now that we would be
right,
based on where we see the project going and rare earth prices going in the future.
So what does that mean? You feel that the scale will be there for this project? I mean, what has Jogmec been digging up and finding, and what do we now know that leads you to believe that you would want to participate?
Well, we did compile all of our new drilling in 2020, as well as all of our flotation and processing work in 2021 into a revised and updated preliminary economic assessment that was published in November of 2022. And it returned a very robust economic analysis. This project at that time, it was about just under a $400 million US net present value with an internal rate of return of about 28%. And we believe that the scale of this project can go potentially even much bigger.
Right. Okay. And can you give us a sense of timelines of when this third term option finishes?
So the terms of the agreement were quite lengthy in terms of them spending the entire money. So they still have another 3 years to go, but we believe that will be dramatically condensed. One of the reasons the timeline was stretched out so far was to accommodate the internal budgetary restrictions placed on per project funding for Jogmec in their exploration department of around 2 million a year Canadian. But the vision is that at some point Jogmec will bring in a Japanese industrial partner or partners to take over a portion of their interest in the project. Once that happens, that moves the funding out of the exploration department and into more of a development fund, which opens up literally hundreds of millions of dollars of potential funding from Japan. So we believe that once that is attained, then we will be able to really accelerate the development of the project through to production.
Yeah, fairly standard stuff there. Camille, you also said that based on what you are likely to process plate, and one of the reasons was where you believe rare earth prices are going. Now, clearly, critical mineral lists around the world being formed, and I guess better understood by the market as well. It has been a fairly erratic set of metals and in terms of pricing and so forth. So trying to forecast out is done how? What gives you that confidence?
Well, we follow the pricing quite closely, and all of the professional prognosticators within the industry are still very bullish as well, despite the significant downturn we've seen in prices over the last 18 months. We're starting to see them creep back up now and start to get back onto the trajectory of compounded annual growth that's been forecasted for a number of years. Fundamentally, there's just a large train that's coming down the track in terms of the supply-demand gap for rare earths, and in particular for heavy rare earths. One of the competitive advantages that we feel that we have with our Lofdal deposit is that we are primarily a heavy rare earth dysprosium terbium deposit. So even though there's lots of large rare earth projects under development and coming on stream, they're primarily light rare earths. They are NdPr projects, neodymium, praseodymium. You look at a project like MP Materials or Linus. These are huge projects producing 25,000 tons of trio production a year. But because of their mineralogy, they can only produce a very small amount of dysprosium and an inconsequential amount of terbium. Maybe only 50, 75 tons of dysprosium a year for those projects. Contrast that with Lofdal, where we look at a project that would be a tenth of the size, only producing 2,000 or 3,000 tons of trio, but we could produce 250 to 300 tons of dysprosium per year, and up to 30 tons of terbium. So significant competitive advantage on a much smaller operation.
So just in terms of the assets as Lofdal itself, I mean, just give me some numbers so people get a sort of context of how much work has happened. So like in terms of meters or dollars spent to date, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so we've drilled about over 50,000 meters of drilling on this project. We've invested historically before Jogmec about $30 million Canadian to get it to this stage, and Jogmec has got about 12 million into it now, and they will have 20 million within the next 2 years. So we'll have about $50 million invested. This project is very well advanced compared to most projects. It takes a long time to bring any mining project on stream, particularly a rare earth project, which can be very complex in processing. We've been working with over a dozen of the top processing consultants all over the world for a decade, and we've really nailed down the processing of this project, and we expect to improve upon our economics that was published in our PEA in terms of processing costs moving forward.
Well, let's see. Look, rare earths very, very technical, like I guess, like uranium, like lithium. Rare earths, very technical set of metals. I mean, I know one of your team, there, Rainer. I had the pleasure of meeting him last year while visiting a couple of projects in Namibia. He's obviously on board. Who else is on board who's actually kind of getting involved with sort of advancing this project or advancing your understanding of this project? Because obviously Jogmec seems to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Is there much work? Is there much G&A required from you and your team? No.
So we are operator of all the programs that are being funded by Jogmec until they get to 51% equity stake. So we manage all of the projects and programs. We work very closely with Jogmec. We have a joint venture management committee that meets very regularly. establishes and works out our budgets and work programs on a quarterly basis. And as I mentioned, we work with all of the top technical advisors and consultants throughout the world. Our lead processing consultant is SGS Canada, who we work with very closely over the last 3 years. And then on the team itself, we have the internal team. We have a fantastic metallurgical advisor based out of South Africa, Barbara Mulcahy, who works very closely with Reiner, who's a geologist, not a metallurgist, in managing those technical advisors in Canada and in South Africa as well.
Right. Okay. So you're operating. It's their money, but you're operating at the point. Let's say they get to this 51% holding. What would their expectation need to be? Because you said, right, in the past, it's fair criticism, it was quite small. You've been through with Jogmec and yourselves, building that scale, starting to build the scale out. What would a Jogmec need to see in terms of size of opportunity in front of them to kind of stay involved? And so while we're at it, two-part question is, if it doesn't hit their criteria, what happens to their shareholding? I mean, is there some kind of clawback mechanism in the agreement as well?
Yeah, so I believe the scale of the project that we've already established now is more than sufficient to tick all of the boxes for Jogmec. With us being able to provide 120 tons per annum of dysprosium to Japan and 20 tons of terbium, that's only half of their forecasted requirement, or less than half of their forecasted requirement. So if we can grow it bigger, they'll take everything we can produce. It really comes down to economics and how economic the project will be at the end of the day, because it is very expensive. It is low-grade deposit that is expensive to process. So we do need sufficiently higher prices than we are currently today to be in an economic position.
Right.
Yeah.
And is that coming?
Yeah, absolutely. We believe so. I think we're getting very close. As I mentioned, the last 18 months, we've seen a significant downturn in rare earth prices, but now, particularly in dysprosium and terbium, we're starting to see that upward trend. There's been a recent development in Myanmar, which is one of the largest suppliers of the heavy rare earths to China, where there's been an interruption in that supply, which is having an impact on pricing. And as I mentioned, the forecasted supply-demand gap is only going to widen, particularly for heavies, as the electrification of the vehicle fleet worldwide continues to grow at a rapid pace.
Right, and what's the actual likely? And I know, obviously, we talked about Namibia sort of banning the export of unprocessed critical minerals, unprocessed lithium, etc. It's a very mining-friendly country, and it is enabling foreign direct investment. And I think they want to help. But what's the reality of a project like yours, which is going to low grade, and we'll work out what the margins are at a later date, depending what the price is? What's the likelihood of a Jogmec, along with another industrial partner coming in, building those kind of facilities in country, or does this inevitably head back to Japan in one shape or another?
So in our projects specifically, we are envisioning a hydrometallurgical circuit at the end of the processing, which will produce a thorium and uranium free heavy rare earth oxide product. So it's already very well down the road of beneficiation. This would enable us to send that concentrated oxide product anywhere in the world for further additional separation into metals. But one of the things we're looking at, so in that, just at the end of that stage of processing, we would exceed any requirements by the Namibian government for processing.
No, absolutely. But there's an opportunity, isn't there? There's an opportunity here for the Namibian government, perhaps.
So one of the other things we've looked at, Matt, is we've been talking with a couple of other early stage rare earth projects in Namibia, and we formed what's called the Rare Earth Alliance Namibia. And we are looking at the feasibility of building a rare earth separation plant in Namibia to be able to produce all three products from all three of these potential mines in Namibia into separated metals. We think Namibia would be a fantastic jurisdiction for such a processing plant. As I said, it's mining friendly. They are very experienced in working with radioactive material as being one of the largest uranium exporters in the world. It has an abundance of solar energy, which can provide cheaper power. So we think it's a fantastic jurisdiction. So we're looking, we just recently formed that earlier this year, and we're looking at the feasibility of building such a processing plant.
Oh, interesting. Okay, and those are they both sort of North American companies?
One is another public entity called ETech Resources, which has an early stage light rare earth project in Namibia, and the other one is a private Namibian company that has an Undotu project, Undotu Mining.
Right. And how are you finding things in the country? Because there is such a real kind of massive flow of companies wanting to set up in Namibia. Is it kind of slowing things down when it comes to conversations with the ministry, etc.? That's what seems to be what we're hearing.
We haven't really experienced any of that, particularly in terms of being able to get access to speak with people. But we are definitely seeing more competition for talent and drill rigs in the country. Particularly on the gold sector, there's been seems to be a real influx of interest, particularly from Australian companies coming in, looking at this emerging gold district in Namibia and capitalizing on some of the successes of B2 Gold and Osino Resources.
Okay, well, look, exactly, yeah. I think that's kind of given me a sort of a flavor of what you're about. I mean, I guess the question is, what do the next 12 months look like for you guys? I mean, you say fully funded, and I guess you are fully funded to the end of phase 3. What should we expect to see and hear from you over the next few months?
Yeah, so we just put out a press release a few weeks ago on the drill results that we had for infill and resource drilling that was done earlier this year, which will be incorporated into a new resource estimate and into our PFS in Q3. We expect to be delivering some consistent news flow on the advancements of our processing that's ongoing with SGS. We are in the midst of just beginning a pilot scale flotation tests and pilot scale hydrometallurgical tests, which will increase the confidence of our processing numbers in the PFS. So news flow will all be continuing over the next 8 to 12 months. And one of the other big things that we're looking at, hopefully over the next number of months, is advancements on bringing in an industrial partner to the venture. Back in June, Reiner and I made a trip to Japan to present the project to about 10 of the top companies in Japan that would be interested in a potential investment in a rare earth project. And we were really pleasantly pleased with the feedback that we received from those presentations, and we believe that there'll be news coming in the next few months, likely on that, hopefully.
Okay, we'll know when you know. Okay. Well, Darrin, I appreciate the kind of run through. Obviously, it's much talked about critical minerals, rare earths. Stay in touch over the next few weeks and months, and let us know how you get on. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Pleasure speaking with you.